You're listening to WDCF 1350 Dade City. Hey everybody, this is Lee Clark over here at WDCF, and I'm going to talk with you for the next half hour, God willing. And I want to bring a guest on. His name is Harold Hemenway. And so I'm going to have to give him a call. So just bear with me while I'm slogging through all this tech stuff. But Harold has a website. It's called British-Israel.us. British-Israel.us. So you can go and look at his articles that he writes. He's a very, very interesting gentleman and quite the scholar. And been acquainted with him for a long, long time. And so we want to give him a chance to get on there and tell you about what he's been doing. Yeah, we're talking with Harold Hemenway. You're up in Whitehorse, in the Yukon Territory in Canada, which is, that's way up there. The Yukon Territory. I mean, I'll bet most people don't have no idea where that is. That's up near, close to Alaska, in Canada.
Yes.
How's the weather up there today?
It's pretty mild. It's got a dry climate. That makes a lot of difference. Even though it's cold up here, it's dry.
Okay.
A sort of a desert climate.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm just playing with levels right now. What's temperature up there? I mean, roughly.
I would say it's just below freezing.
Okay. Well, that's not so bad because people might think, well, you're buried under 10 feet of snow and it's below zero. But according to you, the climate is pretty tolerable up there.
Yes, a lot better than people think it would be up here.
Well, Harold, I told everybody you've got a website. It's British-Israel.us, I believe. I got that right?
Yes,
right?
British-Israel.us.
And, it's funny because I remember when we met, I found out about you. I wanted to find all the people that had been part of the Worldwide Church of God and had split off to do their own ministry, and you were one of the people who was recommended. So I maybe I emailed you or something, or contacted you in some way. This is when you were living in Washington, I think, but that was like 1999 or something like that. So I said, well, do you want to come on radio? That was the deal. I was doing a radio show. I said, do you want to be on radio? You said, yeah, sure. And you sent me a bunch of your booklets for free, which I found was very generous of you. I'm probably talking too much about our personal relationship because we only have a half an hour here, but I just wanted to fill people in on how this went. And so, I looked at them, I said, wow, this is different. And it wasn't, and I never got you on the radio, so this is this I'm finally making good on my promise, like 20 years later almost. And I felt a little guilty about it. I said, you have to get Harold on radio, and I just got back into radio, and I'm in a position to do that. But anyway, I started over the years to look closer and closer at your writings, and I just you're one of my favorite people. I'll just tell you to read because you write about biblical topics, and both of us have things in common. We both observe the Seventh-day Sabbath, and we observe the biblical festivals, which makes us different from most professing Christians. And but I like your writing style because it's so compact and terse, and there's not you just come right out and say what you want to say, and so it's an easy. How some writing is it's like inflated. It's like there's more in there. People go so far into depth that you kind of get lost in there, and you're not like that. Yet I find your writing to be very direct, and so it's compact, and in that way it's rich. You can get a lot out of just a few. Just out of a paragraph or even a sentence. And so I really like your writing style. And your last name is Hemenway, so people might think, oh, Hemingway. Well, so they might say, well, maybe you're from, you've got that author's DNA in you because maybe you're distantly related to say Ernest Hemingway or somebody like that. Are you aware of any kind of distant relation to the Hemingway family?
Well, there might be some relation. I'm not sure. But first of all, let me just thank you, Lee, for allowing me on your show. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you. Trust me. It really is. And you're welcome. More than welcome. How did you develop your writing style? And do you do that intentionally? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say my website is about the Bible. It's called Can You Trust the Bible? And so I'm just trying to explain the Bible in various ways. And in the process of doing that, I came across a really interesting phenomenon. In the book of Revelation, it says, measure the temple of God in Revelation 11:1. And so I tried to use a chart to measure it, a zodiac chart, counting the degrees, because it says to measure the temple of God. It's a 360-degree celestial temple. And when you do that, and you look at the sun's position in the various constellations, it forms a picture. When the sun is in Sagittarius, it forms a crown. When the sun is in Aquarius, it's a bucket that's being poured out. And when the sun is in Virgo, it forms a pregnant woman. And so we can understand the book of Revelation by using astronomical terms, which is the way it was originally written. And so when I discovered this, I decided to write some articles about it. And so that's
Is this how you got? Is this how you got started writing? When was it with the astrological factor in there?
Well, I discovered certain keys about the Bible. One of which was British Israelism, and another of which was historicism. Both of which are neglected by most ministers out there. And then there's also these time periods, like 1,260-year periods and 2,520-year periods. Most people don't go into those. And then, so I at first I started with those particular aspects of the Bible, trying to explain it using those, which helps. And then I came across this zodiac star charts as a fourth sort of a explanation of what the Bible is saying, especially in the book of Revelation. It seems to be an astronomical type writing, and so many of the chapters in the book of Revelation are actually describing constellations in the heavens. You know, I saw a woman, and she was clothed with the sun, and the moon was under her feet. That's astronomical. Yeah, I've read some different interpretations of Virgo when the sun is in her main body and the moon is under her feet. But it's really interesting how every chapter in the book of Revelation can be read from an astronomical perspective. When you take Revelation chapter 11, for instance, you have two witnesses who are dressed in black, and fire comes out of their mouths. Well, that's a description of Gemini. Gemini is two men right next to each other. They're both dressed in black because it's nighttime when you see Gemini. And when the sun comes out of their mouths, that's when the sun is in the ecliptic in Gemini, which is right under the mouth of Pollux, not Castor, but Pollux. And so the sun is coming out of Pollux's mouth. And when the Bible describes crowns on 10 horns in Revelation 13, I think it is, it's describing Cancer, because Cancer has 10 limbs. The crab has 10 limbs. And so when the sun is in Cancer, it becomes a crown that's directly placed on 10 limbs. And in Revelation 16, when you have Aquarius pouring out the bucket, those are the cups that are the golden cups that are being poured out when the sun is in the bucket of Aquarius. And so on. Every single constellation has a chapter in the book of Revelation that's dealing with that constellation, and it forms a certain time period. You know, it's like a timeline, because you can figure out when this is being referred to by the sun in that constellation, and form a year and even a specific date, so that we can actually predict when the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation, occurred in Gemini. The two witnesses become Luther and Zwingli. They were born at exactly the correct time when the sun is in Gemini. And we know that when the sun was in Virgo, that is predicting the exact time when Constantine refurbished Istanbul, and it became the capital of his Eastern Empire. Constantinople, he called it.
Have you? I've been sort of, ever since you sent me your books, I've noticed those charts, and to this day, it's difficult for me to wrap my mind around it. But I did recently. I told you about this other man who's tracking the Black Star, what he calls the Black Star, what other people call Planet 9. But he sort of turned me on to these websites where you can that show our solar system, and you can set it to a particular date, and you can see where all the planets were at that particular point in time, and also the different constellations. And so I'm thinking maybe if I use those programs, or this particular website where you could do that, then I could start to look at, examine your charts in a way that it would be easy for me to grasp. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there because I'm really interested in, I want to be able to see what you're seeing, and I don't know how else to do it, because I've always found it difficult to grasp all the different constellations and the way the sun moves through them, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I could give you an example or two. Garibaldi overthrew the temporal power of the Papal States in 1870, and they incorporated into the Italian kingdom of Victor Emmanuel, and that was when the 10 horns were burned. They burned her with fire. In Revelation 17, that was exactly 1,260 years or 42 months after 610 A.D., so that's portrayed in the zodiac star chart as the sun in Cancer, which is burning. The 10 horns are burning Virgo because they're right next to Virgo, and there's 10 limbs in Cancer, and the sun, of course, is the fire. And in another instance, you have Constantine. He lived for 24 years, and that was a microcosm of the 240-year life of the Roman Empire. And during his life, he refurbished Istanbul, and it became Constantinople. And that was Virgo that was clothed with the sun. And when it says the moon is under her feet, it's referring to the pagan religions that Constantine put down, and he abolished them and tried to outlaw them. And so that's why the moon is under her feet. And so all of this was done in a particular time period, and that is also portrayed by the star charts. So it not only is a timeline, but it's a visual picture of what went on during that time period. it's a very clever. It's actually proof of the inspiration of the Bible. All of these star charts, and so I would just encourage people to just go to British-Israel.us and take a look for themselves, because I don't know of any other website that does this. And yet it's the message of the Bible. It is actually the message of the Bible. It's from Genesis to Revelation. It's not just restricted to the book of Revelation. It's also in the book of Daniel. It's in the book of Genesis. It's in the book of all the prophets. And so I would just encourage people to go there and take a look.
You're when I started, I spent some time, I guess it was over the last couple of years, I really started reading the articles on your website, and I think I got through most of them. And what I started to see was that a lot of the book of Revelation has been fulfilled, is what you're saying. That doesn't mean it's necessarily that there's not a future fulfillment of a lot of the things in the book of Revelation, but I saw that, when I came out of the Worldwide Church of God, we kind of thought, or we were taught that, well, most of this stuff hasn't happened yet. This is all end time. Like most of Revelation is end time prophecy, hasn't happened yet. But that's really not true, because I can see Jesus said to John that, write what you've seen, etc. And Jesus was telling John, I'm going to show you things which must shortly come to pass. And he wasn't kidding. What he meant was, I'm going to show you like the future history for the next 2,000 years, right?
Yeah, that's what the book of Revelation is. It's called historicism, and it's just exactly what you said. For the next 2,000 years, starting in 96 A.D., coming to our very day today. In fact, the Twin Towers, 911, that was actually predicted, and it's found in Revelation chapter 18. And to the very day, that was an event that was predicted in Revelation chapter 18. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. That talks about the Twin Towers. Both towers fell, so that's why is fallen is repeated twice. And many predictions throughout history have been fulfilled that were written in the book of Revelation, including the French Revolution, the Luther's Protestant Reformation, and even the communist takeover of Eastern Europe is the kings of the East. That when the Euphrates dried up, the kings of the East moved west, and they took over Eastern Europe. The Euphrates drying up is, of course, the Turkish Empire, known as the Ottoman Empire in the 1800s, and that receded, and then that gave an opportunity for the communist Russians, known as the Bolsheviks at that time. They moved west, and they took over about 5 or 6 nations, and so we still have some prophecies to come, namely Christ's second coming. He's pictured as a Sagittarius. He's pictured with a two-edged sword. That's the crescent moon in the bow of Sagittarius. So that's why it's a two-edged sword. And shining as the sun. Well, that's because the sun is in the head of Sagittarius. And so Christ is pictured as the constellation Sagittarius, known as a white horse in Revelation 19, because the Milky Way is filling up the body of Sagittarius. And it's really interesting that Planet X, which everybody's speculating on, is coming through Sagittarius. It's incoming, and it's coming through Sagittarius. So could it be that Christ is that Planet X is not a bad thing in one sense? It could actually be the second coming of Christ. People wonder how he comes back to the earth. Well, Planet X may be the method. And he went to prepare a place for us. It says in John, could that be one of the planets that is circling Planet X? Planet X is not just one planet; it's a 7-planet system. I think something like that. People have described it as a planetary system. Could one of those planets be the place that Christ has prepared for us, the Christian believers? There's speculation on that, and it's all astronomical. Everything in the Book of Revelation is astronomical.
You know, it's funny because Jesus said when you see in the Olivet prophecy, one of the versions, I forget which one, maybe it's Luke, but when you see all these things start to happen, look up, for your salvation draws nigh, something like that. To look up, and as people, we're always looking straight ahead usually, or we're looking at a television screen at the news or on the internet, and we're looking for things on Earth, things that are happening on Earth, but, how often do we look up into the sky and look at the stars and say, wow, God created all these, and is he trying to tell me something here? Well, he is, because in the scriptures it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and they speak to us, right? And I know, of course, that sort of underlies your whole message, to recognize God's creation, and this isn't just a haphazard, arrangement of stars in the sky that we see. That's God is. And what's so amazing is we know how huge the universe is and how infinitesimally tiny we are compared to the rest of it, and yet God has arranged it so that it's sort of putting on a show for us. You know what I mean? Spelling things out, drawing a picture as a, how people say, well, what do you want me to do? Do I need to draw you a picture? Right? Like, you don't understand. Do I need to draw you a picture? And the answer, of course, is yes, you need to draw me a picture because I don't understand. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So,
originally the stars were intended by God to be for signs of the zodiac. Genesis 1:14, it says the stars were intended to be for signs. That's the constellations. Genesis 1:14. And then Psalm 19, 1-4 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge using sign language. They have no verbal speech. They use no vocal words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice, by means of sign language, goes out into all the earth. Their pictographic words to the ends of the world. Now, that's a scripture in Psalm 19, 1-4. What does it mean? Well, when you start looking at each scriptural verse, and using the sign language that is portrayed in the zodiac heavens, you find that the Bible is entirely an astronomical book. Entirely. Every single chapter of the Bible can be portrayed in a visual picture, just as you said, through the heavens. And that was the original Bible. Before we had a printing press, before Gutenberg started printing the Bible, the original Bible was the zodiac. The plan of salvation is there, and every chapter in the Bible is also there.
That's amazing. And just to remind people, we've got about 4 minutes left. We're talking with Harold Hemenway up in the Yukon Territory in Canada. And to see Harold's charts and the accompanying articles that he's written, and there's a great wealth of these, especially recently. You've been so prolific in going, it seems like you're going through a lot of the major books of the Old Testament and showing us astronomical charts. I was calling them astrological, but maybe that's not right. They're astronomical charts that correspond to the various books. And to see those, go to Harold's website. It's british-israel.us, british-israel.us, british-israel.us. And hopefully some of our people can get there after the show and check it out. By the way, I'll send you a copy of the show in about 3 minutes. I'm going to have to cut away and prepare for a new show. But I'll send you, email you an MP3 of the show. And yes, still there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic. I appreciate it.
It goes so fast, doesn't it?
It sure does.
What we've got a couple minutes. What do you have any final words for us out here?
Well, yes, I do actually. Donald Trump. He's actually predicted in the Bible. He was born on the 14th of June, 1946. He will be 70 years old. He was 70 years old, 7 months, and 7 days old on his first full day in office. Isn't that incredible? Which is January 21st, 2017. In the Hebrew year, 5777. Now, our Lord will return at the last trump, 1 Corinthians 15:52. So that may be an indication that that Donald Trump is right near the second coming of Christ, and which is the seventh trump. So his name actually is mentioned in the Bible.
Right, it's twice in the New Testament, and yeah, to me that's a glaring sign that we are very, very close to the return of Jesus Christ, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible because you think, well, how long is it going to take? Things could happen really, really fast. All these executive orders that he signed now in the last first week in office are really shaking up the world. He is going to he's shaking things up big time. So I think
it's wonderful.
It is. I am cheering him. Hey, we have to pray for him. I asked my audience to pray for him. He made it through to the inauguration. He's alive and well over there in D.C. And I really love this man. I just love him, and I know you do too.
Yes.
And yeah,
I wish him success.
Oh, me too. We just need to pray for him. Yeah, absolutely. And that's fascinating information you came up with regarding the president. So. This goes. My show is usually. I was doing an hour show. Now I'm down to a half hour, and it goes so fast. But we've been talking with Harold Hemenway, and go to his website. It's British-Israel.us. British-Israel.us. And I know you have a lot of books at Amazon available too. Harold, just Google Harold Hemenway at. Over at, I know if we Google you, we'll come up with you, Harold Hemenway, and your website, and at Amazon. You can check it out. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got time for. Harold, thank you so very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lee. I sure appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, God willing, and I'll send
Bye.
you the show. Bye-bye. Okay, that's Harold Hemenway. And so now we're going to return back to WTAN. Thanks for listening. You're listening to WDCF 1350 Dade City.